Before we go any further, we need to create a data structure, which will basically be our computer's brain. It will store everything our program learns. And if you remember, I explained how the data structure would work. Basically, we'll give the computer some example sentences to look at, and the computer will remember what words commonly follow each word. I think a good data structure in Java to help us do this would be a map. A map is basically a list, but instead of accessing each element by means of an ordered integer index, like 0, 1, or 2, we access it by giving it something called a key. And that key can be any type. It can be a string, a character, an integer, or even an object. Well, in this case, the key for each element will be a word, and the value for each element will be a list of all the words that follow that word. So here's how we build that in actual Java code. We make a map of strings to array lists of strings called computer knowledge, why not, and instantiate it to be something called a hash map. There are different types of maps, so we just have to choose one. And now, as you can see, we've got to import a few things into our project, beginning with array list, then map, then finally hash map. Alright, now we can read the file, because we have somewhere to store the information we get from it. I'm going to need a few variables that are going to step through the file word by word, one after another, in order to know how to store each one. So let's create a string called next, and another one called previous. Then we'll make a loop that will continue to grab each word from the file until there are no more words. And each time it grabs a word, we're going to assign our next variable we just created to be the value it grabs. And we'll say as long as our previous variable has a value, we get to add another element to our computer's brain, or our data structure, which is a map here. Then we need to know if the particular word we're looking at already exists in the computer's brain. So we'll try to access it by passing it into the get function of our map. If it does exist, it will return the list of words that follow that word. So we'll try to assign a variable to store that return value. If that return value is null, it means it doesn't exist yet. So in the case where it does exist, which is this code here, we just need to add another word to that list. And that word we're adding is the value stored in our next variable. Otherwise, in the else, it doesn't exist yet, meaning it hasn't seen the word before. So we'll create the list of words that follow it and add next to it. And we get to put a new element in our computer's brain with the previous word as the key and the new list we just created as the value. Then finally, right before the loop is done, we need to advance the value of previous so that on the next iteration, it will hold the value currently held by our variable called next. And that's it. We finished our read data function. Now we're ready to write the function for option 2, which is to train the program manually. And the cool part is we'll get to reuse this read data function, so it won't take very long at all.